I've done most of the things that
I talked to hundreds of alumni who never visited, didn't even know we had a garden, never visited. And I am sure that less than 10%, or maybe at most 10% of the students in their 4 or 5 years at Berkeley ever get it up to their own garden. I mean, it's kind of sad, don't you think? It's a beautiful resource. The site is a beautiful place for everything from just kids looking at things in the water. They love to do that. It's a great place to sit if you want to contemplate and paint. Great place to paint. And invariably when people are getting married here, it's a absolute must photo site because it makes beautiful wedding photos. It comes from Japan via San Francisco. In 1939 there was a World's Exposition, like a World's Fair on Treasure Island. In fact, that's why they built Treasure Island out in the bay. And the Japanese pavilion that was part of the exposition was a huge pavilion, and around it they have these beautiful decorative stones, like the ones you see here, the one I'm sitting on, and all those big stones in the waterfall. And they also had a bunch of lanterns, Japanese lanterns. The fair was supposed to go on in 1939, but they actually, I guess it was very popular, and they didn't end until 1940. And then the Japanese government decided, rather than bringing their stones back home, they donated them to campus. And I'm not sure campus knew what to do with a bunch of big rocks, but they came up with a plan to develop a formal Japanese pool here in the garden. And the Japanese government brought over their own stoneworkers and worked on this. So we're talking about late 1940. We had 5 years ago a very serious landslide flood that filled this whole pond with mud right in the middle of the newt breeding season. And a whole bunch of us got in there with nets. We fished out about 1,000 newts and a bunch of babies. We put them in holding tanks up in the back of the garden. And then I had to hire a, what would you call it, a big sludge truck, sewage truck, parked up on the road. The big pipe sucked the whole pond and mud out. This doesn't technically, should not be here. We should be cutting this down because it doesn't belong in Asia. It is the California buckeye, okay? Been growing here since 1993. And buckeyes often have this weird and wonderful shape. But look up at the size of it. It's a much bigger one than on campus. So, you know, we plant geographically and we try to recreate different parts of the country, but we make exceptions for things that were growing here before it started. One of them is a California buckeye in the middle of Asia. Okay. This little spiny looking plant here. Got this weird name, Sarcopaterium, comes from Greece and the Middle East, in the Mediterranean area. This is what the scholars now think is the Jesus crown of thorns, that it was made out of this. And it looks kind of soft, but if you put your hand in it, it's not very pleasant. I could see where you wouldn't want a big wreath of this wrapped tightly around your head. It would hurt. So we have very little lawn. Many gardens, if you go to gardens like San Francisco, they have huge lawns where people play frisbee and their dogs run and so on. This is not that kind of place. This is a much more intimate, I think more romantic place. This is our little lawn. You'll often see students spending the afternoon on the benches or on blankets just studying or picnicking. And sometimes we catch students doing other things that we don't necessarily encourage in the public. We have one wonderful thing when our docents were walking by and a young man was down on his knees in front of a girl, and he jumped up very embarrassedly, and the docent said, "Oh, don't let us interrupt, go ahead." And the girl said, "He was proposing to me." So they said, "Well, please don't, we don't want to interrupt," and they took pictures of them proposing. That was sort of romantic. But then for your health and other pleasures, all along the left side here is a Chinese medicinal herb garden. which will cure almost anything that's wrong with you, from sexual dysfunction to phlegm. And then in that beautiful area there that's being watered with the bridge in the middle is the herb gardens that have culinary herbs, fragrant herbs, herbs for our plants for doing fiber and dyes and things. So it's a wonderful, pleasant little place. And now we're working with a member of the Department of Practicing Art, a very talented young woman named Ozge Samanchi, whose specialty is sort of cartoon art. And she's created a series of 20 cartoon tiles, and this is my favorite one. She's placed these 20 cartoons throughout the garden, related to the, appropriate to the area she put them in. And this, as I say, is one of the fun ones. This is how I mark my calendar. And what was funny about this is, this was here one day, okay, there are 20 of these. It's the only one on the first day we put it in, a bird pooped right in the middle of it. What we're doing, it's part of our effort to bring more art. We're bringing music and art into the garden. A garden should have something for all the senses. And at the last minute, we have this sculptor named Emma Torrance, who has put up this temporary exhibit of giant cartoon trees which go with our cartoon art. So this summer's theme is comics, cartoon. Have fun. Here's the other one. This little tree there, a couple of feet tall with the little green, long green leaves, is a relative of the monkey puzzle tree, this little one. And it's called the Wollemi pine from Australia, and it's another discovery of another dinosaur. It was thought to be extinct for over 30 million years from the fossil record. And in the early 90s in eastern Australia, a forester got lost and stumbled across a valley, and they grow over 100 feet tall. You can imagine, here in your lifetime, they're discovering 100-foot trees that nobody knew were alive. It doesn't seem possible, does it? But then you'll see like giant agaves. Look at that unusual salvia. It's called lime green. Okay, Salvia mexicana lime green, because of these. It's a special variety of them. They're not all that way. But then you have these giant, very unfamiliar things to us. Look at those giant. And see, that all grows in the middle of exotic oaks and things. This is an exotic Mexican oak. The garden here has one of the country's main collection of Mexican oaks. In fact, we're part of a national conservation group because of our oaks. An oak conservation group. Agaves from Mexico here. Most of these plants are from Mexico.